In today's video, we're going to discuss why you need to be prepared. We're going to touch a little bit on our external threats, such as China, North Korea, the coronavirus, the people sick in India, but mainly we're going to speak about what's going on in this country, our internal threat, and that would be our own government. Okay, so let's jump right into this. We have our external threats that are hitting us right now. That would be China, that would be Russia, that would be North Korea. You know, they all want to take us down and they want to get money for themselves, you know, because it always comes down to resources and people. So if they can control us, that means they can get our resources. And that's a big problem. Iran also, I didn't discuss that. Iran has nuclear capabilities now. We have the threat of an EMP, an electromagnetic pulse, if you don't know what that is. Are these things to worry about? Of course they are. But what's not being discussed right now, something being talked about in the news, is our internal threat. The government is printing lots of money. So what do we do about it? Well, we have to hedge our bets. You can get Bitcoin. You can, invest in silver and gold, physical stuff. But we're not even going to discuss that right now. We need to look back in time to see what happened in the past to kind of gauge what's going to happen in the future. So that's what we're going to look at today. Okay, so we're going to go back to the Roman Empire. Rome started as a monarchy, just as America started as a monarchy. They fought for their independence, basically, and, well, I don't know if they'd say they fought for their independence, but they went from a monarchy to a republic, just as we did in America. We had our revolution, the founding fathers wrote documents to protect us from that kind of stuff, and we turned into a republic. Things were going along pretty good for Rome and for America until, let's discuss Rome, until Rome went into deficit spending. I believe it was the Second Carpathian War when they went into deficit spending. We went into deficit spending probably around World War II. What did the Roman Empire do after they went into deficit spending? So as their economy started to fail because they were at war and, they kept expanding. So as they expanded, they needed more money, obviously. And the senators and the emperor, they got drunk on power. Kind of like what's happening here in America. So what did the Romans do? They started to do their coin clipping. And basically all that is every time a Roman citizen would walk into a public building, they would take one of their coins and they would clip a piece of it. And that's what you paid to get into a public building. So they did coin clipping. And what they would do is they would take those clippings, they would take them, melt them, and make more coins. Kind of sound familiar? We hit a button and we start printing paper money. As that started to fail, they would start to use cheaper metals to make their coins. Now, their main currency, they were backed by gold and silver. Kind of like America was. We had gold, our money, the silver certificates, which used to be dollars, backed our currency. And that's how we had good money. And that's how Rome had good money. As things got worse in Rome, they started instituting certain things. And that's what we need to look at because that's where we're headed right now in this country. So if you were a Roman citizen and you made, I'm going to use English terms, current terms. If you made the minimum wage, $5 an hour, say, and you wanted to get another job that paid more money, you would leave that minimum wage job and you'd go to another job and make more money. Well, the first thing the Romans did was they kind of set a minimum wage for everybody and every kind of job that you could have. So if you were a street sweeper, you made $5 an hour. And say the baker down the road was making $8 an hour. Well, everybody started leaving their street sweeping jobs to become bakers. Well, that wasn't working too well. So the Roman Empire said, okay, stop. If you're a street sweeper, you have to stay at that job. You can't change jobs because they didn't have anybody to clean the streets. So if you change jobs, it was under the penalty of death. So people couldn't leave their jobs. And their economy started to fail more. They started to get hyperinflation. You know, in history, the first hyperinflation ever recorded was with the Roman Empire. On top of that, you had a military that kept expanding, so they needed more money to go out and do things like conquer other countries. So what was Rome's answer to this? Well, we need to raise the tax base. So let's let pretty much anybody who wants to be a Roman citizen become a Roman citizen. Because to be a Roman citizen, that was a pretty big deal back then. Kind of like coming to America and getting your citizenship is a really big deal. Everybody wants to come to America still, no matter what the left says and they say how bad it is. The reality of it is we're still the light on top of the hill. You know, we're the shining light. People want to come here. They have opportunity. Well, that didn't work out too well in Rome because as they clipped the coins, you know, they debased their money from gold and silver, and they started raising tax on the wealthy. So the wealthy basically went out of business. They started letting people come in to Rome and become citizens so they could raise their tax base. Is this kind of sounding familiar? And as they did that, the economy got worse. You know, in a nutshell, after about 50 years of this stuff, you know, they experienced hyperinflation. You couldn't leave your job. If you did, you'd be punished by death. It got so bad in Rome that if I was a baker and my son would have to take my position as a baker if I died or if I was sick. And if he didn't do that, under the penalty of death. They also became a welfare state. So as they brought all these citizens in, and a lot of them were just like, well, I'm a Roman citizen now. I can live the life of Riley. Well, they didn't work. So what did they do? They had what they call, I guess, the bread and circus phase, where they had the Colosseum. It was a 50% welfare state. They had to feed bread and alcohol to people to keep them happy. So you'd go down to the Colosseum, you'd pick up your bread, they'd let you in for free, and they'd give you free wine. Well, it wasn't free, of course. It was the people that worked really hard, that continued to work, that would pay for that wine basically through the taxes. And this is what happened in Rome. And this is kind of what's happening here in America. I mean, we're mirroring exactly what Rome did. This is why we have to be prepared. We have to be self-reliant. I know this was in a really nutshell kind of way, but we have got to be ready. Our fiat currency is worth nothing. President Nixon took us off the gold standard. It was in 1971 or 1972. So another thing that happened in Rome was, you know, if you paid 2 cents for a loaf of bread, the Roman government said, okay, that's it. If you pay 2 cents for a loaf of bread, that's what you're going to pay forever now. So the people that made the bread couldn't make any money if the guys who grew the grain to make the bread even charged more. And this is what happened in America when Nixon took us off the gold standard. You know, he said, what you paid for a loaf of bread in June, you will pay for a loaf of bread in August. They set prices on goods, and this just kills the economy. I'm not an economist, I'm not a historian, but I read lots, and this is what happened. And this isn't good. When the government sticks its toxic fingers where they don't belong, they poison things. And the government does it all the time. You have got to be prepared. You know, you have to be able to start growing your own food. It would behoove you. If you live in the city, if you're in a, you know, built up urban environment, you can grow things on your patio. You know, you can get a pot of soil and grow lettuce. You can grow tomatoes. You You know, if you do it the right way, you can grow potatoes. You know, there's lots of things you can do to be more self-reliant. We cannot rely on this government. Our government has turned into the Roman Empire. They care about one thing, and that is being in power. I know I'm jumping all over the place, but if you look at what the Speaker of the House would wear sometimes, she wore the staff of power on her shirt. You know, and this is from Rome. I think the Senate adopted it, or the House adopted it back in the 30s, but is called the staff of power, and it comes from Rome because they were the powerful. They had the purse strings, and they have it now, and they control everything now. And they're printing money and printing more money. They're trying to bribe us with our own money. You know, and I that's a quote I heard from Dan Crenshaw from Texas, representative from Texas. But it's true. They're bribing us with our own money. And when you hear the federal government, or the Fed, who is not really the federal government, they're just a bunch of banks, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, JP Morgan, you know, these bankers are running us, and they don't care about us. They want to maintain control, and we cannot let that happen. We have to be prepared. We have to hedge our bet with food, with Bitcoin, with physical silver and gold. So in follow-on videos, you know, the next video, I'm going to show you how to take a bag of rice that'll last about a year on your shelf to make it last 25 years. You know, and what's the worst thing that happens is you have lots of food that you don't have to go down and buy groceries if the economy bounces back. But I don't see how it can, as long as the government sticks its toxic fingers in our economy and poisons it. So I just went on about Rome and our government. So I want to talk about governments and when they do things and they don't learn from history. This exact same thing happened in Venezuela. It happened when they elected Hugo Chavez, a socialist. He came in and said, I'm going to make everybody equal and everything equal. Well, he did. You know, everybody's equally poor except for people in the government. People are starving to death in their homes. They don't have medical care. They can't get medical care unless they're ultra wealthy. And it's just sad. You know, Venezuela was the emerald of South America. They have more oil in the ground than Saudi Arabia does. And when the government stuck its toxic fingers in the economy and started nationalizing oil, once they did that, our oil companies pulled out. And they didn't have people to run the oil companies. They couldn't manage it. And when they were managing it, what were they doing? They were taking their oil, sending it to Cuba. Cuba was sending, you know, their security people over to teach the Venezuelan government how to control the population better. And right now, as we speak, people are starving to death every single day. My wife is from Venezuela. She left that country 2 or 3 years after Chavez got into power. And that place is done. It went from the crown jewel of South America to the toilet of South America. They've had a drain of brain power in Venezuela. And they have super smart people, engineers, doctors, lawyers. They've left. They've gone to greener pastures. Some went to Colombia. Some came here. Some are in Mexico. You know, they got out when they could. And it's a shame because that place has oil. It has lots of gold in the ground. You know, and now people are starving to death in the streets. Professionals picking through garbage to get food. And anybody who says that can't happen here, they're kidding themselves. It happened in South America, in the richest country down there. And it can happen here. I've spoke to my wife about this years ago. And she would always say, oh, that can never happen here in America. And now she's mortified because it's happening here in America. So I'm begging you, get prepared, get food. You know, like I said at the beginning of this, we have external threats. But people are missing the biggest threat of all, and that's an internal threat from our own government. They're trying to take our arms. You know, that's exactly what happened in Venezuela. You know, the government said, you don't need your guns, after they told people to register them. Then they started collecting guns. And when they tried to overthrow that government a few years ago, they were out in the streets with sticks and rocks, as the government had tanks, anti-armor personnel, and people shooting at them. The criminals, they didn't turn in their guns. The government down in Venezuela employs criminals to take care of the population. Kind of like what Germany did. You know, we're repeating ourselves. We have to be prepared. Get your stuff together. Learn how to grow your own food. I'm going to have videos on how to store food long term, but it's vitally important. You know, inflation is going to hit. Deflation's already happening. Shortages are already happening. Everybody's talking about the ammo shortage. Well, you know, we have an ammo shortage. That's kind of a supply and demand thing. But food shortages are a real thing. We're getting ready to have medication shortages. You know, we get a lot of generic drugs and IV drugs from India. People are sick. It's not going to come. Be prepared. Get your stuff together, because the S has already hit the fan, and this is a slow rolling train wreck that we're in right now. I never thought this would happen in my lifetime. I knew it would happen, but I just never thought it would happen in my lifetime. I thought it might happen towards the end of my son's life. He's 8 years old. Well, now he has to deal with the problems we caused, our generation. It doesn't matter if you're left or right now, because the reality of it is we're all in this together, and we need to be prepared. We are all in this together. Get prepared. Start to know your neighbors. If you're in a neighborhood, know your neighbors. I mean, in my neighborhood, I have neighbors, and we have a plan if things go bad. You know, if it hits the fan, we're going to be able to take care of ourselves. It's vitally important you start doing this. If you live in the city, if you're in an apartment complex, start to know your neighbors. You know, see who you can trust, who you can't trust. Start storing your food, whatever you can. Like I said before, if the economy doesn't go south and you have a lot of food, you're fine. You'll be okay. You can use that food over time. It's long-term storage for food. That's what we're going to talk about in the next video. I know this was kind of a rant, but I can't get it across how important it is you get prepared. Our economy, our fiat economy, is going to bust. And even if you have Bitcoin, you know, where are you going to get stuff? I mean, that's a problem. So start getting prepared. Semper Fidelis, and God bless our country.